The Emperor's New Clothes. Many years ago, there lived an emperor, who was so inordinately fond of fine new clothes, that he paid out all his money for the sole purpose of being particularly well dressed. He cared nothing for his soldiers, he cared not a whit about the theatre, or for driving in the park, except alone that he might show off his new clothes. He had a garment for every hour of the day, and just as they usually say of a king, he is in the council chamber, they always said of this emperor, he is in his clothes cabinet. The great city in which he lived was very gay, and everyday visitors came in large numbers. One day 2 swindlers, who gave themselves out as weavers, arrived, saying that they knew how to weave the loveliest cloth that anyone could imagine. Not only were the colors and the patterns something extraordinarily beautiful, but the clothes which were made of the cloth they wove had this wonderful property: they became invisible to every person who was unfit for his office, or was too stupid for any use. They would certainly be fine clothes to have, thought the emperor. By wearing them, I could find out what men in my empire were not fit for the positions they hold. I could tell the wise from the stupid. By all means, that cloth must be woven for me at once. And he gave the 2 rogues a great deal of ready money with which to begin their work. They immediately set up 2 looms and pretended to be working. But they had nothing at all on the frame. They called continually for the finest silks and the purest and brightest gold. This they put into their own pockets and worked away at the empty looms, even keeping it up far into the night. I should really like to know how they are getting on with the cloth, thought the emperor. But he had a slightly uneasy feeling in the region of his heart, when he remembered that anyone who was stupid, or was ill-suited to his office would not be able to see it. Of course he was sure that he needed to have no fears about himself, but still he wanted to send someone first, to see how matters stood. Everybody in the whole city heard of the wonderful power that lay in the cloth, and everybody was eager to see how bad, or how stupid his neighbor was. "We'll send my honest old minister to the weavers," thought the emperor. "He can best see how the fabric looks, for he has sense and intelligence, and no one fulfills his duties better than he." So the good old minister entered the room where the 2 rascals sat working at the empty looms. "Mercy on us," thought the old minister, opening his eyes wide, "I can't see a thing." But he didn't say it aloud. Both the rascals begged him to come nearer, and asked if he didn't think the pattern was beautiful and the colors lovely. Then they pointed to the empty frame, and the poor old minister stared and opened his eyes still wider. But he could see nothing, for there was nothing. "Good gracious," he thought, "is it possible that I am stupid? I never have thought so, and I am certain no one else thinks so. Is it possible I am not fit for my office? No, no, it certainly would never do to say I cannot see the cloth well, sir. You haven't said anything about it," said the rascal who had continued to weave. "Oh, it is beautiful. Perfectly lovely," said the old minister, looking through his spectacles. "What a pattern and what colors! Yes, yes, I shall tell the emperor that it pleases me beyond measure." "Well, we are glad to hear that," said both the weavers. Then they named all the colors, one by one, and described that ghostly pattern. The old minister listened closely, so that he would be able to repeat it exactly when he got back to the emperor. And repeat it he did. Now the swindlers demanded more money, and more silk and gold, which they had to use in their work, they said. All of this, too, went into their own pockets. Not a single thread was ever put on the looms, but still they continued to weave, as before, at the empty loom. The emperor sent another faithful official to see how the weaving was progressing and if the fabric would soon be finished. With him it fared as it had with the minister. He looked and stared and looked again, but as there was nothing but the empty loom, he, of course, saw nothing. "Now isn't that a beautiful piece of cloth?" asked both the rogues, and they pointed out the beauties of the pattern, which was not there at all. "Stupid I am not," thought the man. "It must be that I am not fit for my good office. It is certainly very queer. But of course I must not give myself away. Then he praised the cloth he did not see, and assured the weavers of his delight at the exquisite colors and the artistic pattern. It is just too dear for anything, he told the emperor. Everybody in town talked about the splendid fabric. And now the emperor wanted to see it himself, while it was still on the loom. So, accompanied by a whole train of chosen men, among whom were the two honest old officials who had been there before, he went to visit the crafty rascals, who were weaving with might and main, without the smallest bit of a thread. "Isn't it magnificent?" cried the two honest officials. "Just look, Your Majesty, what a splendid pattern! What wonderful colors!" And they pointed to the empty loom, for they thought the others surely would be able to see the cloth. "What's this?" thought the emperor. "I don't see anything. This is dreadful. Am I stupid? Am I not fit to be emperor? This is the most dreadful thing that could happen to me." "Oh, it is very beautiful indeed," said the emperor aloud. "It has my unqualified approval." He nodded his head in a satisfied manner, and regarded the empty loom, for never would he say that he could not see anything. The whole retinue that had followed him stared and stared, but with no better results than the others had. Yet, although they saw nothing, they all exclaimed just as the emperor had done, "Oh, it is very beautiful, indeed." They advised him urgently to have clothes made of this splendid new cloth, and to wear them for the first time in the great procession, which was soon to take place. "That is magnificent, wonderful, superb," was the cry that went from mouth to mouth. Everybody was perfectly pleased with the suggestion. Both the rascals were knighted by the emperor, who gave each of them a cross to wear in his buttonhole, and bestowed on them the title of night weavers. All night before the day the procession was to take place, the two rogues sat up at their work. They had more than 16 candles lighted, and people could see that they must be very busy and hurrying to get the emperor's new clothes ready for tomorrow. They pretended to take the fabric from the loom. They cut in the empty air with great shears. They stitched away with threadless needles, and finally they said, "At last the clothes are ready." The emperor himself, accompanied by his most distinguished courtiers, now arrived, and each of the rogues lifted one arm in the air as if he were holding up something for inspection. "See," they said, "here are the trousers. Here is the coat. Here is the mantle," and so forth and so on. It is as light as gossamer. A person would think that he had on nothing at all, but that is its greatest merit. "Of course," said all the courtiers. But they could see nothing, for there was nothing to see. "Will your Imperial Majesty now graciously condescend to take off your clothes?" said the rogues. "Then we shall put on the new ones for you, over here before this big mirror." The emperor took off all his clothes, and the rascals acted as if they were handing him, piece by piece, the new suit which they pretended to have woven. They reached around his waist and pretended to fasten something. It was the train, they said, and the emperor turned and twisted in front of the mirror, as if to view the effect from all sides. "My, how becoming they are! How well they fit!" said everybody. "What a pattern! What colors! What splendid garments they are! They are waiting at the door with the canopy, which is to be carried over your Majesty in the procession," said the Master-in-Chief of Ceremonies. "Well, I am all ready, you see," said the emperor. "Don't they hang well?" And he turned around once more before the mirror, for he wanted it to appear as if he were looking closely at all his finery. The chamberlains, who were to carry the train, fumbled on the floor with their hands as if they were picking it up. Then they walked along holding their hands high. They did not dare let it be known that they could see nothing. And so the emperor marched in the procession, under the beautiful canopy, and everybody on the street and in the windows cried out, "The emperor's new clothes are peerless. What a beautiful train! How wonderfully they fit!" No one would let it be known that he saw nothing, for that would have meant that he was unfit for his office, or else that he was very stupid. No clothes that the emperor had ever worn had been such a success. But he has nothing on," said a little child. "Just listen to the innocent," said the child's father. But one person whispered to another what the child had said. "He has nothing on," a little child says he has nothing on. "But he really hasn't anything on," at last shouted all the people. The emperor had a creepy feeling, for it seemed to him that they were right. But then he thought within himself, "I must carry the thing out and go through with the procession." So he bore himself still more proudly, and the chamberlains walked along behind him carrying the train, which was not there at all.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing content.